Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of Birddogs, Bourbon, and the Good Life. Our guest today is Steve Westfahl, owner of Irish Creek Outfitters in central Kansas. We have known for Steve for quite a while. He is a big entrepreneur on the outfitting and wildlife side. So he's on here today to talk to us about his business, talk to us about the things he likes to do and everything else. But one of the primary things about our podcast is bourbon. And today, Mitcher's, did I say that right? Mitcher's Single Barrel Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey. So it's not a bourbon, but it is from Kentucky. It was established in 1753. On the side of this thing, it says, distilled in small batches according to Mitcher's pre-Revolutionary War quality standards dating back to 1753. This is a 84.8 proof whiskey. Honestly, it's pretty good. Even though it's a Kentucky whiskey, it doesn't have the classification of bourbon. It tastes a lot more like bourbon than our last two have tasted, and those were labeled bourbon. It's a darker, more flavorful Kentucky whiskey. I enjoy it. It is still not where I say it's not super high quality yet. It's good, but it's not fantastic. But overall, it does give you those flavors you're looking for. It's still not quite as bold as I like them to be, but it is good. So, again, Mitcher's Single Barrel Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey right here. And that's what I'll be sipping on tonight. Steve prefers not to sip on the whiskey with me, and that's perfectly fine. Any one of our guests that don't drink or choose not to drink, that's completely up to them. We do not drink, just to be clear, we do not drink our bourbon to get intoxicated. We drink our bourbon because we enjoy the flavor of it. So, good evening, Steve. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Hey, real quick, before we get rolling, why don't you tell everybody the name of your organization, and then we'll start talking about things and kind of give them a general location and maybe how to contact you, okay. And then we'll cover that again later in the podcast.
Well, my wife and I, Margie, we run Irish Creek Outfitters, and we're about 15 miles south of Hutchinson and about 40 minutes west of Wichita, near the Cheney Lake area. We have property stretching from up north of Hutchinson to west of Arlington. And we own and lease approximately 5,000 acres of ground.
5,000 acres of ground, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a good amount. And because of that, we can offer a lot of different types of hunts. I prefer to offer what I call semi-guided hunts when it comes to deer and turkey and so forth. If we need to provide a guide, we've got a lot of good people around with some good bird dogs, and we release some birds and supplement the bird population for pheasants and quail and chuckers. Haven't done a lot of waterfowl hunting in the last couple of years because we've been really low on water.
It has been pretty dry over the last few years, hasn't it?
Yeah. We haven't maintained a big heavy subsoil moisture for crops and so forth, no. But we've had good crops, so it's makes for good food plots. We don't have to put out very many food plots for our operation because our whole country is a food plot when it comes to deer and turkeys and
so because this is April, and this is in the middle of what I would call prime turkey season,
right?
Okay, a good area to hunt turkey would be around an alfalfa field, wouldn't it?
Yep. Yeah, turkeys like bugs, and they like corn. During the winter when we're putting out corn feeders for deer, why our cameras will show as many turkeys as anything else during the winter months.
Really, about how many turkey do you see during the winter months?
Well, it's been a little light the last couple of years, and because of that, the Wildlife and Parks have cut us back to one tom turkey. We used to be able to kill two. I haven't had as many hunters come in because the out-of-state hunter is not going to come from Virginia just to hunt one bird.
Yeah,
you know
that is a little challenging. Mm-hmm. Isn't there a fall turkey season as well?
There had been.
We were
able to, at one time, to get 4 birds in the fall, and they could be anything. It didn't have to be a bearded bird. I think we're down to 1 now.
Oh, even in the fall.
Even in the fall, and And in the fall, the birds don't respond to calls and stuff. You about have to set up in the right place and just let them walk by you and ambush them and be done with it. But you know as well as I do that 10 years ago, there's some properties out there that we could see 100, 150 birds in a bunch in December and January.
Oh, yeah, quite easily.
And I don't know. I think I've seen one bunch this year of 25 birds.
So they're recovering.
They're recovering. One of my hunters already this year saw, on one property, saw 2 nests of turkey eggs. So they are trying to nest.
Good.
And that's a good indication. Years ago, we used to have 8 or 10 in a hatch.
Yeah.
In the last few years, it's been 2 and 3.
Yeah. I think our predator population has gone up.
Predators have gone up. I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things as far as turkey goes, but bobcats and coyotes and, of course, skunks, possums, coons. And more recently, some of my friends that come up and hunt from Texas, they claim that an armadillo will destroy a nest of eggs if they find one.
I believe that the way they root around.
We've got a lot more armadillo now than we did 6 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, you know, people in Texas talk about red ants being a problem with new hatches of birds and so forth. That's why the quail population, nowhere in the country is there anybody bragging about their wild quail population.
So I haven't heard of any.
People at, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, they all talk about their quail hunting in the past tense.
Yeah.
They just don't have the quail they used to have. So something has gone awry, and someday we'll figure it out. But as of right now, we are not building populations back. But that doesn't mean we can't have good quality hunts.
Correct.
Because, you can most of the hunts I have will supplement the bird population with some released birds and try to do a good hunt for 2.5 hours in the morning and then 2.5 in the afternoon.
But that's an upland game hunt.
That's upland game.
Okay.
That's not turkeys, no.
Yeah, let's go back to your turkey hunts for a minute.
Okay.
Could you tell me, so if I wanted to come down for a turkey hunt, so number one, what would that ballpark it cost me? And how many days, how does that work?
You can buy your tags over the counter on turkeys. You don't have to get them in advance. You can get one tag because even an in-state hunter can only kill one bird.
Yeah.
So you get to kill one bird. And in my situation, I just charge for a one-day hunt. And if you don't kill and need to hunt a second day, then you pay for a second day of hunting. If a group of 3 comes in, for example, and one of them kills a bird the first day, but the others want to stay for a day or two, the person that killed the first day wants to stay in my lodge. He just pays the overnight lodge fee, and his hunt stops. So, he can come in for $300 in one day and kill a bird, and then $50 a night he can stay with his buddies and while they try to hunt after that. So it's not real expensive. When we could kill 2 birds, I made them pay for 2 days worth of hunting.
Yeah.
To get 2 birds. So, yeah. And
so
Kansas is different a little bit because we can hunt from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
And we can kill, up until recently, we could shoot 2 birds in one day. And, there are a lot of states out there that you don't start hunting until 9 or 10 o'clock and you have to quit by 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And you can only kill, I think it was Minnesota, a few years back, we had a gentleman come and hunt with us, and he thought you could only kill one bird a day. So he was going to go waste time somewhere, and I finally got him convinced he could shoot the second bird the same day, and in about 3 hours' time, he'd killed both birds and went home.
Yeah, that was a few years back when we were able to have.
When we had a lot of birds.
Yeah. One of the things that I believe impacted our turkey population is I believe Wildlife and Parks come around and caught bunches of them, bunches and bunches of them, and did some trading or horse trading with another state for something. I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, east of Hutchinson, up here in the Sandhills, and by the east of the golf course.
Yep.
There were some places up there that there were just. I think Wildlife and Parks had an estimate of like somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 birds in a 4 square mile area. That's
pretty overpopulated.
And they trapped a lot of them and traded them out with some place and moved some up into western Kansas and thinned them out.
Yeah.
A little bit, which probably was a good idea.
Benefit.
Was a good idea.
When you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So people, when they come down for a turkey hunt, a group of them, if one guy gets his bird the first day and then they're staying for a second day, you allow them to stay in your lodge. So
right.
Can you describe your lodge to us?
Sure. It's an old 2-story farmhouse that I grew up in. I've got 7 bedrooms, and we've remodeled and put a full furnished apartment underneath it. And so we've got 4 bathrooms, 2 kitchens, 7 bathrooms, 2 laundromats. We've got a covered patio with a gas grill. The kitchens are fully furnished. All you have to do is bring your own food. We do not cook for you because we don't want to deal with the county health department. You can cook for yourself, which is, there's no restriction on that. And if you call, what I usually do is I tell people I get 1 day's hunt as a deposit to get a little skin in the game. So if I'm protecting 2 or 3 days for you, and then you decide not to come, I at least got something out of it.
Yeah. And you're able to cover the cost where another hunter could have come.
Right.
But you were reserving that date for those people.
We do, like most businesses, we take credit cards. I'd prefer not to have your credit card information. I'd just soon have a personal check and to hold the deal. I'll give you plenty of time if you call early enough and all that. But if we use your credit card, I do not put the credit cards on my computer in case somebody hacks into my computer. Why, they might find your number or something like that. So we just keep it pretty simple.
And if I come down and hunt with you this year, and I choose to come back next year, can I go ahead and reserve for the next year?
Yeah. I will say, hey, I'll pencil you in, but I need to have a deposit by first of the year or something like that, and it's a tough year, and because of that, turkey hunting doesn't generate a lot of dollars.
No.
And it's a small business. And if somebody has a problem, if COVID hit like 2 years ago, the governor declared that anybody that came to hunt turkeys had to quarantine for 14 days when they got here. Well, there isn't anybody going to come here to hunt one turkey bird and quarantine for 14 days before they can shoot him.
No.
So that basically killed my hunts. I returned all my deposits and never killed a bird last year. So that's just the way it went.
Yeah.
That was just the rules, and you follow them, and I do make people follow the guidelines and the rules, and if you show up and you don't have a hunting license, you're not hunting with me.
Amen.
So I tend to give them some safety techniques and that kind of thing. Depends on whether they're a seasoned person that's hunting by themselves or whether they've got a whole bunch of young people that need to learn something.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
So one of the things that I'm known for on the podcast is changing gears pretty quickly.
Well, shift.
And so there's a couple things when I think of hunting, fishing, is the funniest hunting or fishing experience you've had, the one that you think back and just kind of makes you laugh, and then your most memorable hunting and fishing trip. And so those are the two, and we're going to get to them throughout the podcast, but the one I want to focus on now, because I like to laugh, I'd like to know the funniest one that you can think of. That when you think back, it just makes you chuckle inside. It doesn't need to be a rolling laughter, but just something that when you're thinking back, because I know you've been hunting and fishing all your life.
Yep.
So tell me your funniest hunting or fishing, it doesn't matter which, experience that just comes right to mind.
Well, there's actually two.
Okay, we can talk about
hunting
them.
ones rather than fishing ones. Had a group of guys that, like 6 or 7 of them, and they all had like 5 or 6 dogs, and they had their own dogs. And you know as well as I do, everybody that has a bird dog has the best stinking bird dog alive.
Just ask them, right?
Just ask them. They'll tell you, oh, it's a field trial dog, or it's a wonderful, it won a contest somewhere, or it did that, or whatever. Well, what it amounts to is that about half the dogs that show up should just be left in the crate. Because you can't, it's not that the dog couldn't be a good hunting dog, it's they haven't been trained right, and you can't control them.
Yes.
And we had a group of 6 people that got to where they were ready to move from one property to the next, and the 7th hunter was out trying to find his tremendously powerful good dog. And his dog was a field trial dog that knew how to get 150 to 250 yards away. And that guy thought that dog was just covering more ground and finding more birds and doing so well and all that. Well, he was, but he was flushing every one of them at 150 yards. And those guys came to me and said, any way you can get him to keep your dog in the truck? We don't need him out here ruining our hunt. And I said, hey, it's a self-guided hunt. I said, and you brought him along. I told him, I said, you guys are going to have to bite the bullet and tell that guy that you're unhappy, because I'm not going to do that dirty work for you. And you know, they actually had drew straws as to who was going to take that guy to the woodshed and make sure he knows that that dog was misbehaving enough to just stay in the truck from now on. You know, and that was pretty good. And then we had one, and you're going to relate to this one. We had a group of guys that showed up, and it just rained so hard. And we couldn't get out in the fields because you would pick up 10 pounds of mud on your feet and so forth. And the guide I had, bless his heart, great guy, he showed up with launchers. And we had pheasants and chuckers. And those guys stood around and had a competition amongst themselves because they didn't want to be out in that mud hunting any more than we wanted to take them. And they ended up having a great time. I think we put like 150 birds in the air in about an hour and a half, and they had a competition of teams that got to shoot. And you know, if they shot at the bird and the bird wasn't coming down, then everybody else got to shoot. And they went through a lot of shells in that day.
I can imagine that would be a heck of a good time. It'd be like clay shooting birds. It'd be like a European hunt is what it'd be like.
Yeah. Well, they had a lot of fun. We killed a lot of birds in a short time, and then they were able to get a hold of, like you're doing right there, the rest of the day. Why they found some of that, and the next morning they were ready to go again. And you know, as luck would have it was still raining, so we did another half day hunt of launchers, and they were happy, you know. So anyway, that's humorous. You know,
yeah,
that they found a way to have a good time when they were hunting.
And the good thing about that is you're talking about two humorous situations that you found funny and I find funny, but to the people coming, this is a true signal that you're willing to cater to the environment and the things that are going on. Because a lot of people, when they get their vacation, they're stuck to come no matter what, what the weather is.
That's right.
And you're willing to adjust and to accommodate to the weather and to the hunters and how they would like to hunt and how they want their experience to turn out.
And see, we're just 4 miles away from a little town of Yoder. And Yoder's got a wonderful restaurant if they want to go eat over there. But they've also got a place called Yoder Meats.
Yep.
And if you get done with your hunt early and you're kind of thinking, what do we want to do? Then go to Yoder Meats and pick up a bunch of ribeyes or KC strips or something like that, and stay in and enjoy this kind of fun and Texas Hold'em and things like that, and they don't have to get in their cars and drive home when they're done. So, it depends on the kind of fun you want to have.
Yeah.
But we try to accommodate. We also do use our lodge, though, for things in the off season, like family reunions and class reunions and wedding receptions and things like that. So we can sleep about 24 people.
So
in the lodge.
Define your off season.
Off season would be June, July, and August.
So June, July, and August, you open up your lodge to basically and I'm going to say Airbnb, but you guys don't serve breakfast or anything like that. So it is basically you allow people to lease your lodge to have whatever type of event they would like.
Yeah. We've had family reunions out there where they show up and they'll sleep like 20 people in the lodge, but they'll have a whole bunch of other people that stay at family and friends from around the area and even motels here in Hutch and so forth. But they all meet out there to have their 60 or 70 people picnic. And they use the grill to do the hot dogs and the burgers and the bratwursts. And, so we don't mind them bringing 60 people. We just can't sleep 60 people.
Yeah. And you also have tables and chairs for that number of people.
Pretty close. So we can, I suppose we could seat 45 or 50 people at one time, but it's pretty easy to find another 50 chairs somewhere too. It's not like it's, we provide a few things like a ping pong table and a portable basketball goal and, the frisbee golf thing, only we do it in a very crude way and set it up around the grain bins and make them curve it. And, the kids can eat up an hour having a lot of fun with a frisbee.
Oh, yeah. Lots of fun.
And we've got open space. So it's a useful old farm. And the house is made in such a way that I could have two groups of hunters at the same time, but they don't have to mingle. The basement would sleep 12 people. And there's 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen down there. But you don't have to mingle with the guys on the first floor because they've got 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a good new kitchen and so forth. So I could have 2 groups of 6 or 8 people there at the same time. And unless you want to be social, you don't have to.
Yeah. So you have 2 separate entrances then, correct?
Yeah.
That's pretty nice because
the people in the basement have an entrance from under the patio, and the people for the main floor have the main floor entrance, and they like it. It's most people enjoy it what we have. So,
well, that's pretty nice that you have the ability to have multiple groups of hunters.
Yeah.
And yet they don't have to even mingle amongst themselves most of the time.
Yeah.
So going on, I know that you have a little bit of a enjoy of trout fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about some of your most recent trout fishing adventures.
Well, most of the trout, unless you go up here to Dillon Nation Center where they release them here in Kansas, is pretty hard to find trout.
Yeah.
I like fishing out just west of Denver. I have a daughter who lives at Denver, and that's always fun. But I'm getting kind of old, and I don't have the reactions I used to on the trout, so I try to find places where they'll let you use a worm. I'm a Kansas worm farmer, and you get a bunch of trout that have been fished for with flies, and then you dangle a worm out there and float it over a riffle and stuff like that. Why, it's fun, and I like that a lot. I'm finding out that Cheney Lake can be a lot of fun too for crappie and walleye and white bass, and we got a little Nenaskaw River property that we've leased that when the catfish start running, why limb lines and trout lines and so forth are really well. And sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So it's something that an old man probably is going to enjoy more fishing than he is hunting in the next few years of a person's life. But I like the fishing, and occasionally I get to go to Council Grove and catch a whole bunch of crappie and those kind of things. And if you have a good guide and they know where the fish are, it makes a lot of difference.
Oh, yeah. Crappie fishing come winter gets a little cold, don't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you better be prepared.
Yeah. It's a good time, though.
Yeah.
It's a
If you're
really good
catching
time.
fish, it's not as cold.
Yeah. It's the cleaning the fish when it gets cold.
Well, that's what the guide's for. And the friend.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's talk a little bit more about your hunting opportunities in your lodge and what your ground provides. So Central Kansas is known quite well for large deer.
Mm-hmm.
And with that 5,000 acres of yours,
Mm-hmm.
I would think you guys have some pretty good deer hunting opportunities.
We do.
So could you tell me, if I were to be interested in a deer hunt, why don't you take this opportunity to sell me a deer hunt? If I called you and you want to convince me that deer hunting at your place is the way to go, take this opportunity and sell me that deer hunt.
All right. Our deer property is usually a combination of wooded creek areas, cropland, and grassland. A lot of times there'll be a little running water on the property, or at least a pond or a tank, but the water will be close. If I had a quarter section of ground, my ideal place to hunt would have 30 to 40 acres of wooded creek area. And one side would have CRP grass and the other side would have alfalfa and wheat and soybeans and different kinds of crops.
So what's the importance of the CRP grass?
Bedding.
Bedding. Okay.
Them old big bucks will get out in tall grass and lay down and be very, very, very comfortable. The does will stay to the tree lines. And the old bucks, until the does come in heat and we get into the rut, why, the big bucks are lethargic. They like to get up and feed and lay down. And that's why they get big.
So kind of like us old fat men.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. But I prefer archery hunting or archery hunters, because with the wooded creek areas and the big tall cottonwoods and walnuts and those kinds of trees, you can put a ladder stand in there 16 to 20 feet high and put out a corn feeder if you want one. I will tell you right up front, the corn feeders are there because of the hunters. They're not there to feed the deer. The deer don't need corn feeders. They've got all the food in the world here in Kansas. But there are a lot of hunters that think if they don't have a corn feeder to shoot over, they can't hunt.
Which is too bad.
Yeah, and that can change over time. There's lots of states now that are abandoning the baiting or feeding of deer. And so that's a change that may be coming to Kansas. But what I would tell you is that I've got 40-some ladder stands out on my property. I've already got them up. I've got safety harnesses and safety ropes. If you decide to use one of my ladders, you will sign an agreement saying that if you leave the ground, you will have a safety harness on and you will use a safety rope.
So describe to me, I'm glad you covered that, because I was going to ask, as if I was coming to your hunting location. So when I'm going 16 feet in the air, how do I'm a drowsy old guy. What if I fall asleep? What's going to save me?
Well,
so could you describe what these harnesses and the safety rope, how they function?
Safety harness is something you strap on yourself, and there's a clip on the back carbonara or something like that. That's what they call them, and they just clip onto up behind you on the tree. You run a strap around the deal, and then it comes down, and so you can stand if you want to or stay seated. But if you fell, it would catch you and keep you in an upright position. And the safety rope is there so you can hook onto it when you crawl that ladder, and it'll slide up and down the rope unless you pull on it, and then it catches the rope.
So if I slipped off an icy ladder, that rope would tension,
Would catch you.
and it'd keep me from hitting the ground.
Right. You would probably feel the pain of being caught by a harness, but you're not going to land on your head and break your neck.
Yeah, or fall and land on an arrow.
I saw something somewhere, I can't remember, it was from the National Deer Association or wherever, but 80 or 85% of all deer hunting accidents are entering and exiting a ladder.
Wow.
Which, if it's a little drippy or a little snowy and a little drizzly, there's a lot of cheap ladders out there that don't have the sandpaper grit on the steps.
Yeah.
They're smooth and slick, and if you slip, at my age and with my lack of strength, I would go clear to the ground. A young guy could probably go up with one hand without a problem, but not everybody does that.
No.
So I just require in my liability insurance that I carry for everybody demands that I give you the safety talk and that you sign a waiver saying that you will use a safety harness and a safety rope for all ladders.
Which is a really good idea.
It's a good idea. So I've got ladders out. I have box blinds out for rifle season. I have corn feeders out on almost every property. I do set up, I think I've got 17 cameras that I put out by the feeders. And I try to manage the property for about 2 to 2.5 months right ahead of the start of archery season, so that if I catch a good buck on picture, on camera, I can text it to my hunters and say, look what's waiting for you. And they come prepared.
So sweetening the pot, letting me know what's out there for me.
That's right. And we had, 2 years ago, we killed the biggest buck we've ever killed. And he was a double drop tine, but he broke one of them off before they got him killed. And he broke off a G2 that was split. And so we think we lost between 15 and 20 inches of horn, and he still went 194.
That's a big deer.
That's a big deer.
That's
and
a
he
really
weighed like
big deer.
285,
That's
something
a
like that.
big deer.
There's lots of places right now that can have a 10 or 12 point buck that only weighs 140 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're an 84-year-old guy last year came and hunted with his son, and he killed a 9-point buck. He said, those aren't the biggest horns I've ever killed, but he said, that's a 75-pound bigger buck than I've ever killed in my life.
Really?
So he was so happy.
So on top of having big horns, you've got big body mass on your property.
Kansas has got big deer. People can't hardly believe when they come here that we can kill a yearling doe that never had a baby.
Yeah.
And she'll weigh 160 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's the best eating of all the deer.
Oh, yeah.
Is a year-and-a-half-old doe that didn't nurse a baby the first year. And so my feeling is don't kill that great big doe that's out there. She's going to have twins every year. If you want a good eating deer, kill the 2-year-old doe that's fat, because she probably didn't nurse one the first year.
And that's just further proof that you really don't need to put out the corn.
No.
Because you're only putting corn out a month, 2 months before season.
Right.
And that really, the amount of corn that comes out of those feeders is not really enough to really truly sustain that animal.
Yeah. Everybody manages their land a little bit different. I mean, that's what an outfitter does. I lease the land, and I agree to, if somebody's relatives want to do a hunt just to kill for some meat or something, I work with them to help them get their deer. But I will not overhunt anybody's property. This year, I believe I'm only going to have 9 or 10 deer hunters, and that includes both archery and rifle. 2 years ago, I got greedy and had 20 deer hunters, and it was just too much pressure on the property. What I like to do is I like to put my cameras out and put my corn feeders out, and then I've got a schedule that I go back in 2 weeks and check everything out, refill the corn feeders, and do all of that, and then have the pictures to show and all that. But in rifle season especially, I'll pull the cameras up about a week ahead of rifle season, because people coming and going have a tendency to want to get to those cameras and then take the chip out, put another chip in, change the cameras, batteries, all that kind of stuff. And I work very hard at seeing to it that I drive my mule in to fill the corn feeders and don't get off my mule. I crawl back over the mule. I fill it from the mule, from the top. Takes me about 3 minutes to back in there with a mule and fill it up. I do not walk around and spread my scent all over the property. One of the worst things an outfitter can do is to spend a lot of time physically on property that you want to hunt. And we just don't. I don't allow my hunters to drive their pickups on the property. I show you where to park, and then I say to you, if you kill something, you call me. And I'll bring the mule, and we'll go and drag your deer out so you don't hurt yourself dragging a 220-pound deer out, or 250 or whatever it is. But if I tell them they can drive their pickup out there, they're going to find a mud hole, just sure as the world.
And get stuck.
And they're going to get stuck, and then we're going to have ruts out there, and then the landowner's going to be upset, and I'll lose the lease. So, I have to cater to the landlords in order to provide them a quality hunt. And my whole agenda is when people come, they need to have, it's like when you go out to eat.
Yeah.
You want a good, you not only want a good meal, you want a good eating experience.
Correct.
And the same thing goes with deer hunting. If you have a lousy deer hunt and don't kill a deer, you'll tell everybody you talk to. But there's people that'll come and hunt with me that kill a good deer every year, and they're not going to tell their neighbor where it's at. When they go back home, they're not going to tell somebody that they can call me and come and get a hunt before they do, So that's why I limit my numbers to let's say 10 or 12 at the most.
Yeah.
But I've got one group of 6 archery hunters that I cater to every year. And as long as they'll maintain 6 hunters, I'll let them pick their dates that they want to hunt. And they almost always hit the rut and are very successful. They don't get 6 deer every year, but most of the time they'll get at least 4.
But that group, if I understand our conversation before the podcast correctly, that group comes down just as much for the camaraderie as they do for the hunting experience.
Yep.
Is this the group that you were telling me about, that every time they get a deer, everybody piles on the gator and goes, and
if
it's a big experience?
If it's like when they killed the drop tine deer that went 194, why all that guy did was text his group and says, drop tine bites the dust. And everybody else piled out of their ladders and said, don't track him till we get there. And all 6 of them showed up and helped trail the deer. Well, he got a real good shot on him, and he only went about 110 yards. And then they had to take pictures with everybody there. I mean, everybody's camera takes good pictures now, all their phones and everything. It took us 30 minutes to get the deer put on the sled to haul him out of there. Because everybody wanted their shot at getting their camera to have a picture. And the funny part behind that is there was a guy over at Carriage Crossing Restaurant, which is where we send people to eat a lot of times. It's a good place to eat. Okay. His name's Mike, the owner. One of the guys knew Mike from years ago, but he also had a friend back in Michigan. And this guy texted him that drop tine buck. And before we left the field, Mike from Carriage Crossing texted us about how big a deer that was. So it had been to Michigan, back to Mike at the restaurant, and then back to me out in the field within a matter of minutes.
Isn't technology amazing?
Everybody had a good time, and then they all had to get their picture taken with that deer as they were processing and skinning it and all that kind of thing. And so it was a fun time. I enjoy having them people here, and they're always good, always good. And I will say this too: 98% of the people that are out here hunting are just fine, good hunting people.
Yes.
But the other 2% can just
ruin it for everybody.
The reputation of a good hunting industry and stuff like that. So, when you hear and see things and stuff like that about somebody doing something wrong, just realize that for every one or two that does something unethical, there's 95, 99, some high percent like that follow all the rules and just enjoy having a good hunt.
Yes. And along the lines of people coming out just for as much the camaraderie as the hunting experience, you cater to some of that too, don't you? You give them the opportunity to have a grill to cook their food if they want to do that. Yep. You have a ping pong room if they want to do that.
Yep.
You even, if I understand correctly, you even have a trap thrower you'll pull out if they really want it.
Yeah. Yeah, if they want to shoot some trap or do some target shooting or whatever. And in all honesty, the last few years, Kansas has allowed for night hunting for predators.
Oh.
With night vision scopes.
Yep.
That kind of thing. It's surprising. They'll show up with some of that. And it's really, for those of us that haven't done that much, it's kind of fun to look through one of those scopes and watch the cars go by a half mile away out on the highway. It looks like there's a pair of Cheerios chasing each other going down the highway because the tires are lit up.
Yeah.
And some of those guys they don't spend the kind of money they spend on night vision scopes and then not back that up with the kind of gun that would kill something at 600 yards.
Yeah.
They're
that
ready.
Is true.
The one guy, I don't know, he had like $12,000 in his equipment to do night hunting. And
not all states allow that.
No, but we do here. And I guess I didn't do a good job of selling you that deer hunt. Because what it amounts to is I take you to the property. I show you where everything is, let you pin it on your phone. That's what you want to do. I give you advice and show you where to park, and then I get out of your road. That's what I call a semi-guided hunt. And it's your responsibility to get up and have breakfast in time to be in that stand an hour before you could legally kill something. And if you mess it up, it's your hunt. I'm not going to go over there and babysit anybody. I think if you're big enough to say you can kill something with a gun, that you ought to be able to go out and take responsibility for the hunt. And that's why we tend to price things the way we do. I mean, things have had to gone up just a little bit because leases out here are a little more expensive this year than they were the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
It's gone up a little. So
everybody's trying to offset the inflation currently.
Yeah. Well, I used to buy corn for like $5.75 a hundredweight. You can't buy it for under like $8 a bushel now, which is 56 pounds. So see, it's almost triple.
Whoa.
If you're buying it in bags, it's prohibitive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But I do fill the feeders, and I have that all done, and we take the cameras and the pictures, and I put the ladder stands up, and I've got straps that are fresh. Sometimes if I don't loosen a strap around a tree for 6 months or something, why it'll begin to grow so tight into the tree that it gets questionable as to whether or not it's safe.
Yeah.
We'll cut those straps off and put a new one on ahead of deer season. And the box blinds, it is Kansas, and they're basically, all they are is a box to get you out of the wind and to let you see in all four directions and to get you high enough off the ground or in a position to where you can see in all directions. You're welcome to take a little buddy heater with you to kind of take the cool off of it if it's really, really terribly cold. I'll go in ahead of time when you're before the hunting season and make sure that all the windows and doors work right like they're supposed to, and that it's stable and everything. And occasionally we'll spray a wasp nest and clean it up a little bit so that there's not a varmint in there.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But it's all ready to go. And at the same time, if you want to bring a ground blind and do a pop-up ground blind, you're welcome to. Just bring your own and put it anywhere you want to. And,
which is pretty nice. So if I remember correctly, you said you had 40 deer stands out?
40 ladders.
40 ladder stands.
Mm-hmm.
So for an archery hunter, if you bring a group of 6,
mm-hmm.
you have 40 different options
mm-hmm.
for that group of. So obviously each person you're not going to put all 6 people in one ladder stand. No. So it's one person per ladder stand, but that group of 6 could determine amongst themselves 40 different locations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Most of my properties will have ladders set up to address whichever wind direction you come in from. If you need to come in from the north, I'll have a ladder stand in a spot where I think or know the travel lane is. If you're going to have to come in from the other direction, I'll have a ladder there to use. Sometimes a guy will hunt a certain property and there'll be 3 ladders to choose from, and he'll only set on 2 ladders the whole time he's here. So the other one didn't get used because the wind was wrong.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
So your ladder stands are strategically placed
Yep.
to maximize your hunter's opportunity
mm-hmm.
to fill their given tag.
Right.
And you place them knowing south wind, north wind,
Yep.
the patterning the deer, their
mm-hmm.
travel patterns and
Yep.
feeding habits, and you can kind of tell them.
Yep. And then the last few years, whenever I've needed to do something different with a ladder stand, ladder stand doesn't last forever. I mean, they can get to the point where you think that doesn't look good anymore. So anyway, I've gone to using the buddy stands.
Oh, the two-person stands?
The double wide ones, because I can't sit in one position without feeling like a potato chip after a short time. So I need to be able to shift my body one way and my body the other and stretch my legs out and set the gun up with that rail around it. And I need to be able to have a little movement. Some of the real narrow ones, one-seaters, you don't get much movement. And a young guy get along fine and all that, but we're just getting softer as a society, and I like the double stands. So, and on top of that, it's pretty hard for them to steal a double stand and lay it in the back of a pickup and walk away with it.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to stick out to where it can be seen. And we will occasionally lose ladders and cameras and things like that out here. But that happens all over the country.
Yeah, and that's too bad. That's too bad that
mm-hmm.
that we have that 2%
mm-hmm.
of people that like to try to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
So you also, if I understand correctly, via the conversation you had earlier, you have a river property,
mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have got some pretty good deer off that property, haven't you?
Yes, we have.
Is that where that drop tine came from?
No. But we had a good buck each year off of that thing. And it's the Nenaskaw River. It's the kind of river that you could wade. It's not armpit high in any way. Normal depth getting through one side to the other of that river would be knee deep.
So it's not super deep.
The deer don't pay attention to it at all.
No.
They just go. And I've got a good food plot out there by that one. And we've killed turkeys out there. We've killed ducks off the river. And there are a lot of deer in this area. We could shoot more does, but out-of-state hunters don't want to come in here and shoot a doe.
No.
Now, they will. In fact, this group, if one of them accidentally kills a doe the first day, they'll take the back strap and the tenderloin and that out of it, and then they'll cut them up in little medallions, and they'll deep fat fry them and have, they say, we'll have appetizers. But what they're saying is that's all we're going to eat tonight.
Yeah.
By the time you eat about 12 of those, you're full.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
very much so.
Kind of thing. But that's as good eating as you're going to find.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things we haven't covered yet is, what did you do before you retired? And so once you get done with that, I've got my next question for you.
Oh, I'm being set up here, I can tell. I had a career as a county extension agent, and I worked for Kansas State University for 36 years, most of it in Sedgwick County. Wichita.
Real quick, most people, I'm going to say most people, may not know what a county extension agent is and what they do.
It's the off-campus outreach program of Kansas State University. We take all the research and the information that the university puts together, and we provide it to the people out here in a non-classroom setting. For those people that can't go to school in Manhattan because they can't take the time off from what they're doing, why we try to bring the information to the people. And I had an enjoyable career, but I did that from the time I was 22 until I was 57.
So that was
a long career. 36. I spent 36 years at it, and as everything else goes, you find things to pick at, and the reporting and the accountability to different things instead of just doing what I like to do and be with the producers and that kind of thing. It became more of a challenge for me. And when I started fussing with it a little bit, I decided, I might as well be working for myself. And I had this idea of doing the outfitting, and we still have a farm, so I have 800 acres of ground that our family owns, and so I can do all my pheasant and quail hunting on that 800 acres, and I can do a lot of deer hunting on 800 acres. But I still lease this other property too for just the hunting. I don't have the farming part of it.
So you said you take information from K-State or the universities and share it to people that can't get. What kind of information?
Oh, well, like how to properly use fertilizers and herbicides and insecticides, and what types of nutrition you need on your livestock, and what type of health program to have for your cows and your sows and your horses, and the types of energy efficiency you can use on the farm, and building construction on the grain handling systems, and just crop rotation. And lately, I've been retired since I was 57, and I'm 74, so I've been at this outfitting thing for like 16, 17 years.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, what that means is I haven't stayed up on every little detail on the ag side of it, except for my little bit of acreage that I farm and all that. But, there's lots of decisions to make on seeds to plant and genetics and what sells best, and how do you harvest your alfalfa crop the right way in order to get the most dollar value per acre, and what varieties of wheat and milo and beans and corn and all those kinds of things. It's just decisions all the time. And our motto back then used to be that our business was to help people help themselves.
That's a pretty good motto.
And we could give them the information, and then they get to decide how they want to use it. A big thing we did was marketing. How do you use futures? How do you use options? How do you use forward pricing when it comes to selling a wheat crop? Current wheat price, cash wheat, is about $11 a bushel right now.
Yeah.
How many people know that they can go out and sell that wheat crop now before they ever harvest it?
I didn't.
Well, some do and some can't, but you can do that either a cash forward price, or you can do it with an option, or you can do it with true futures contracts. But not very many people do. They're scared that they're going to lose on both ends if they lock in a price. Because if you sell 50% of your crop and then you get something goes wrong and you only raise a 30% of the crop, you got to go find the other 20% to deliver on your contract.
Oh,
So you can, it's just, you got to know what the details are and everything. And there's lots of good organizations out there that can help you get through that, ADM, Cargill, places like that have people that are expert at that kind of thing.
so if I were wanting to reach out to a county extension agent, what would be the process for someone to do that?
Oh, there's a Reno County Extension office. It's just go to Reno, KSU Reno County Extension.
So would that be about the same for any location that has extension offices?
There used to be a county extension office in all 105 counties, but they've combined some of them now, and there's liable to be 3 counties go together and have one extension office.
So if someone were to, because we love Google, right? If someone were to Google extension office near me,
Yeah.
would that get them the information
Sure.
they were looking for?
Or if you even just said, hey, Reno County Extension, it'll come up with a deal, even if it happened to be in Kingman. This is the office that serves Reno County
Ah,
type thing. And
okay.
so there's a number of combined counties now, but it's a good service. It helps a lot of people. And that office runs the 4-H program. And it runs the Master Gardener program. So, it's horticulture, it's home economics, it's 4-H and youth, it's agriculture and natural resources. And there's different people run each of those departments.
What is the Master Gardener program?
Master Gardener program. It's a group of volunteers that get trained in answering questions like, what do I do with my asparagus at the end of the year, and how do I make my iris bloom better, and what type of fertilizer do I put on a fescue yard versus a buffalo grass yard, and what about this tree? It's got this and this, and then they say, I'll bring a leaf in, let me look at it and see what the disease is, and it says, this is it. So now you need to either trim it off and burn it, or you need to use a fungicide on that tree at a certain time in order to help it. And so those people are volunteers that help other people that have questions about just small things on their landscape around the house. And what shrubs do I plant that are not going to grow into the foundation? And how far away should I plant my arborvitae, or no, they don't plant those anymore. My yew or a flowering crab or something like that. How far away from the house does that tree need to be? Well, there's lots of reasons for that.
That's a enormous amount of information that I did not know you could get at the extension office.
Yep.
And this was basically your job.
Yeah.
For the life of your career.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I most of my career I was an agriculture agent, so I dealt with producers. I didn't deal with the people that just live on an acre.
So, so just so people understand what you mean by producer, give a definition of a producer.
Producer is somebody that provides a commodity to the general public for consumption, whether it be a meat, a milk, or a grain. A lot of people don't realize how much grain is consumed in this country, mostly soybeans and corn. That's human consumption. Milo, a lot of oats, a good share of the corn. Those are animal feeds. They make 16 to 18% protein. People don't realize that it's sophisticated. It's fine-tuned. And a dairy cow needs to have about a 17% protein grain ration. Well, to get that, you need to have about 20% soybean meal in a grain mix.
Really?
Which is a lot of soybean meal.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But at the same time, alfalfa hay can be as much as 25 to 30% protein if you harvest it correctly.
Really?
Yeah. And
so
people don't realize right now we've got wheat out there. Wheat pasture in the fall and the spring can be as high as 30-some% protein. That's why the deer love it.
And is that why when I go out and I see some people will put cattle on a wheat field? So is there any risks in putting cattle on a wheat field?
Not really, but you got to realize that if you go out and you harvest all that wheat off of there and it grew real tall, and you harvest it when it's young and it's 6 inches tall or less and everything, you're taking a lot of protein off. So you got to put more nitrogen on if you want to have a wheat crop along with it. You shouldn't be on your wheat pasture right now. Because
Okay.
the heads are coming above ground and they're jointing, and if you cut them off, you've cut the head off a chicken.
Oh.
That wheat will not produce a grain crop on that plant if you pick it off and eat it.
I didn't know that.
But if the head is down by the crown and you graze across tops of it, you're not stopping it from producing grain, but you're taking the plant material away from the top of it so that it doesn't have a lot of plant material to draw on to fill that head when it decides to head out. So you got to put a little more nitrogen on.
So when should a person? So I see a lot of cattle on wheat fields, and it's typically either right as it starts to come. When would be the best time and the safest time to maximize your crop, to maximize protein to the cattle? When would be the best time to put your cattle on a wheat field?
If you're doing it as part of your plan, you're probably going to plant it late September, 1st of October, and about 6 weeks later you can start grazing that alfalfa if you've had good moisture and it's grown well in the fall of the year.
Alfalfa or wheat?
Wheat.
Wheat, okay.
And so you can, as long as there's growth out there to eat, you can graze it in like late November, December, January, February, and half of March. And then it starts that spring growth. When the spring growth starts, it shoots that little growing point above ground, and that growing point has the head. That head of wheat is only about 1/8 of an inch long when it comes above ground. And then it grows and expands into a head that might be 3 inches long. So you don't want to be cutting that off with cattle. So you've got some time in there. You don't want to keep grazing it into April. That's why, to me, the cattle ought to be, all of them ought to be off the wheat, unless you're a producer that says, I'm going to graze all my wheat off clear to the ground, and I don't want a wheat crop. I just wanted to have something to graze cattle on. And then they'll graze it until it's gone. So lots of choices out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so stupid question. I'm not real smart. So if a cattle producer says, I'm just going to graze my wheat off, would that be considered grass-fed wheat or grass-fed cattle?
Yeah, at that point in time, as long as he had more grass to go to. Grass-fed, in general terms, means they ate something that's growing out in the field. They didn't eat something that was put in a feed bunk in front of them to consume.
Okay.
Grass-fed is forages. It's not grain. Most of the cattle in the big feedlots are eating about an 80% grain to forage ratio.
Okay.
And the forage that they're eating might be a ground hay of some kind. It might be a silage of some kind. But it's an 80% grain mix because that grain provides the energy for that cattle to grow like 3.8 to 4.2 pounds a day.
Wow. That's a lot.
They gain a lot of weight.
So
But they can't do that on grass.
No.
But grass-fed is still a very reasonable and appropriate way to grow cattle. It's just that you got to realize that you're not going to have a 1,200-pound steer at 14 months of age with grass-fed cattle. It's going to take you another 4 months to get them to the age or the size you want to accomplish something.
So a even balance of those two would probably be the best way to maximize your dollars.
Most people will put weanling age calves at 500 to 550 pounds, and they'll grow them for another summer on grass to get them to weigh 750, and then they go in the feedlot and they'll gain 3.5 to 4 pounds or so a day. until they weigh about 1150 to 1225 or something like that, and then they will be ready to kill at that time.
Okay. So that at that point in time they go to market or whatever they end up doing at that point to be in our grocery stores so we can have our hamburger, our steaks, our prime rib.
That's right.
All those things that we want. So I'm going to jump conversations again.
All right.
And I am going to ask you if there was a trip, some kind of outdoor trip, hunting or fishing trip, that you would just really like to do. It's on your quote-unquote bucket list.
Bucket list, yeah.
What would that be?
Oh, I've always heard that the fishing I think they call it God's country in Canada, lake trout,
Yeah.
and they get big,
Yeah.
and it's very pristine. It's not like there's 12 boats on every shoreline,
Yeah.
but I've heard that's a fun thing to go to, and I would like that. But there's something you want to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of fun just on a small river here in Kansas or a good farm pond. You can have a lot of fun. I remember back when I was a teenager and we had a lot of fence rows and we had tumbleweeds that would catch in those fence rows. If we got a 6-inch snow, we knew where we were hunting the next day. The pheasant would be under the tumbleweeds, under the snow. And you get a couple of guys and, I'll say that one of them walked down the middle of the
Fence line.
of the tumbleweeds at the fence line, and a boy or two on each side, and come the last 50 yards of that fence line, why, there'd be pheasants.
Pretty exciting pheasant trip.
Oh, wonderful!
And
deer hunting. It's been like 6 years since I've killed a buck.
Yeah.
And part of that is because I like to see somebody happy enough. I had an old gentleman come hunted last year. He was 84 years old. I probably told you this already on here. I can't remember. But he killed that really big buck. He said that buck was like 70 pounds bigger than any buck he'd ever killed in his life. And he's coming back. And he'll crawl that ladder. And he'll be in the same spot he was the year before. And I've already guaranteed him when he left last year that he could have that same spot. And so he's applying. Hopefully he gets his permit. And everybody's in good shape. But you can. It's a mind thing.
Yeah, it is.
If you go hunting and fishing, no matter where you go, if you go there with the idea that you're going to have a good time,
you will have a good time.
You will probably have a good time.
Yes. And with that being said, we're going to shift gears to your upland game hunting opportunities. Because I know your guide pretty well. Me and him, we talk. And when I was talking to him, we have the understanding that anymore, very, very few of the upland game hunters that come out are really focused on hunting, but they're more focused on the big group of guys that come out and have the opportunity to spend some time together. It's more of camaraderie than hunting. The hunting's just the activity they do. So they have something to do while they're having camaraderie. And why don't you walk us through what an average hunting trip would look like from when they get there, typically the night before, and then walk us through the next day and even when they leave.
Typical hunt, if let's say we had a group come in between 4 and 6 hunters. And most of them would come in the afternoon or evening before their hunt. And maybe there'll be one or two show up then the next morning by 7:30, 8 o'clock, something like that. We usually start hunting at 8:30 or 9. And if it's going to be a 9 o'clock hunt, I will release birds or plant birds, however you want to look at it, at about 30 minutes ahead of time. Usually there's 2 or 3 of us that take the mule and go out, and we actually spin the birds, dizzy them up, put them in certain locations, and very few of them fly away. They'll stay right there until they get their bearings back, and by then we're gone.
Yep.
And they kind of stay. Well, I'm fortunate that I've got some strips that are CRP grass, and they're narrow and wide and up a terrace and down a terrace and bend around a curve, and it's a really very enjoyable hunt. And it goes about 5/8 of a mile south of the lodge, and then you slip down and cross a little wheat field for 25 yards and come back on another one. So it's going to take you 2.5 hours almost to go down and back. And if you got 6 hunters that are going to hunt, if I normally would put out 5 birds apiece, we'd put 15 birds for the morning hunt and 15 for the afternoon hunt. But then I also explained to them that if they want to have a little bit better hunt, they can buy another $100 worth of birds. And last year that would have got them 5 birds. This year it may only get them 4 birds. I mean, I don't know what the price is going to be because I don't raise these birds. I just buy them.
Yeah.
You know. But we can put out as many birds as they want to have a good hunt. And it's surprising. A lot of people will add some birds to their hunt.
Yeah.
Because they want a few more birds. Well, you know, we're on a controlled shooting area, so you can put out all the birds you want to pay for. And but we'll hunt for 2.5 hours in the morning. Then we take an hour and a half or so break at noon to rest the dogs, and we clean a few birds and get them ready for the afternoon hunt. And then if they only want to hunt for an hour and a half or 2 hours after noon, we'll put all the birds out in a short distance so we can get all those birds in a short length of time. And it makes for an enjoyable hunt because if they're not wore to a frazzle, they'll be willing to hunt the second day. Most of the people that hunt with me will come in on an evening. They'll hunt 2 to 2.5 days and leave on the third day about noon. And that third day, they want all the birds put out for the morning hunt.
Yeah.
And so, you know, instead of 5 birds apiece, they might get 10. And, you know, that's a lot of birds. That's 60 birds potentially in the air in a 2.5 hour hunt.
And that's a pretty exciting opportunity for them.
It is a wonderful deal. And when we work with the people, we go through the safety seminars with them and we explain how you're going to hunt in a line, and I make sure they know that there's a right way and a wrong way to hunt on those terraces, and that if the guide tells you something, you better listen. Because you pay for the hunt, but the guide's in charge of the hunt. And most people have no problem.
And the ultimate reason the guide's in charge of the hunt is number 1, safety. Mm-hmm. And number 2, to maximize their success rate.
Right.
Because obviously the guide's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. It's not to. He's there to, or she's there, whoever the guide is, is there to ensure that the hunters have the most fun, the safest way possible, and as prosperous as physically possible.
You know, knock on wood, whatever you want to do. We've been at this for a lot of years, and we have yet to hurt somebody. Now, we've had some mishaps where somebody was in the wrong place and wasn't paying attention, and maybe somebody got chewed on a little bit because they could have had a problem. But we have never hurt anybody on a hunt.
And that's because you guys are so focused on safety.
Yeah. Another reason that the guide is in charge of the hunt is because the guide has like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 invested in every dog. And that dog knows what the guide wants. And the first thing the guide will tell him is I'm in control of the dogs. Don't be talking to my dogs. Let me handle the dogs. And there's nothing better than to have 3 good bird dogs running for 2 hours and kicking up 20 birds. And every time one goes on point, the other 2 honor. And very seldom do you lose a bird. And they'll have a competition to see who picks the bird up and brings it back. You know, that kind of thing. But a good bird dog, at my age, I can go hunting and not carry a gun and have just as much fun hunting pheasants.
Amen.
Because I like watching the dogs, and I like watching people that have never killed very many birds actually get the experience of learning how to shoot a bird on the fly.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there that have never killed a pheasant.
Yes, there is. And you have the opportunity with these strips to make it so it is a really controlled opportunity. Now, for the people that, I'm going to ask this question, then I'm going to go back to another question I have. So for the people that want to come down for a completely wild hunt, because they are wild bird hunters, they don't want those pen-raised birds. With that 5,000 acres, do you have the opportunity to give them the chance to go try to find wild birds?
Yes. And what I tell them is that we don't have the bird population that we used to have. And I'm more than happy to have you take your dogs and work a big area. I've got a 480-acre spot that I know has some quail in it, but very seldom do people find the birds. It's too big an area. And unless their dog is just a champion and you know where to go and all these kinds of things, why, you can hunt all day on 480 acres, and there might be 5 coveys of quail out there, and you never find a bird.
Yeah.
That's just the way that is. Well, I tell them, I said, hey, we'll do it this way. You hunt, and when you decide that it isn't quite the way you want it to be, I have the availability to supplement that bird population on my controlled shooting areas so that your dogs find some birds and everybody gets some shooting. If you want to go try to find the wild birds first, you're welcome to it. And a lot of people will do that. But, it don't take them very long to go out. You spend 6 hours out there hunting and nobody shot their gun more than once, they're real receptive to having a released bird.
Yeah, and just about the time the turkey population started going pretty south, the pheasant and quail population started going south too.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. I believe that the best thing for pheasants and quail are weeds.
Yes.
In our agriculture that we used to have. We used to have set-aside land that you couldn't raise a crop on, and nobody spent any money on it because you just didn't want to spend any money on something you couldn't produce on. Well, those fields all grew up in pigweed and ragweed and Russian thistles and bindweed and all those kinds of things. Well, there's nothing better for a pheasant than a bunch of pigweeds and Russian thistles. Well, with the way we do things nowadays, we plant fence row to fence row, and we double crop, and we do all kinds of things. All those weeds are managed in such a way as to kill them off before they set seed. And I think that has hurt us, as far as from looking at it from the side of wanting the pheasants.
Yeah.
From the agricultural side, it's probably the most economic thing they can do is to raise the crops the way they are. But it's just changed.
And that's where a lot of, because of natural farming practices and, let's say, natural succession, because of farming practices and because of other aspects, that's where coming out and hunting with you has become a very ideal and actually cost-effective way to come out for a hunt, because you're not spending the hours and hours scouting, driving. And if you figure with gas prices now and you're driving all over the place trying to find walk-in hunting and private ground, by the time you've done that, you could have paid for your whole group to stay at the lodge. And well, maybe not completely, but
it helps offset it. But people, it depends on where you want to spend your recreational dollars.
Yes.
There are people that will load up 6 or 8 people and go to a Kansas City Chiefs game.
Correct.
In Kansas City. They go the night before and they tailgate before and they celebrate afterwards and do all that kind of thing. They almost spend as many dollars driving up there to watch a football game as if you had hunted for a couple of days with me.
Yes, I agree.
Because but some people want to do that,
Yeah.
But everybody wants the opportunity to shoot a bird when they come hunting.
Yes.
And in today's society, young people, they want instant gratification.
Yes, they do.
I guarantee you, if you take a teenager out there and he's 17, 18 years old, and you hunt all day and he only shoots his gun once,
He probably ain't coming back.
He put that gun away,
Yeah.
and he's not coming back. And the same thing goes with older people. I'm 74 years old now. I don't walk up and down the riverbank like I used to,
No.
and that kind of thing. I can fall down the bank while I'm fishing, and it's that's why I do mow strips on my controlled shooting area. And some of that is so that we know about where the center line is on a hunt, but it's also so that the older gentlemen that don't walk through tall grass well can walk in mowed grass until the dog points the bird. And then he can take 20 steps and walk out into the grass and get in on the hunt well and everything. So I try to take care of us older guys.
Amen.
On that deal, because I want them to hunt for another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And the easier the hunt, the more apt they are to come back.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
So it's and everybody worries about pen raid birds. Oh, I don't want any of them pen raids where you got to kick them to make them fly. No, not true. I buy birds that are raised in flight pens, and those birds will fly. Now they may hold pretty good, and when you get up there to them, if a dog lunges at them, or you say to your dog, "Help me," and the dog goes in to find the bird, that bird will get airborne. And when he goes, he's going to get away as fast as he can. And nobody has ever complained about the pheasants not flying well. Now, chukker's a little different story. If a chucker is in a real wet, slickery kind of day, they don't like to fly well.
No, they do not.
So if you're going to have a bright sunny day, we had a group again that said they weren't getting enough birds that one day, and for a 2-hour hunt in the afternoon on that one group, well, I think you were in on that.
Yeah.
We released 160 chuckers for 10 or 12 guys,
plus the 80 or 90 pheasants that were left.
Yeah, and it was like a small war out there, and they had the greatest time. Of course, that was a group from a corporation.
Yes. So with that being said, obviously you offer corporate hunts.
Mm-hmm.
So corporate hunts, they can. So let's say I'm a corporation and I'm coming in. I'm gonna ask you some questions, and you can elaborate or just say yes or no, however you want to do it. So I want to come in. I'd like to have a 2-hour hunt in the morning. I'd like to have a 2-hour meeting over lunch. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have a 2-hour hunt in the afternoon. Then I'd like to have a 2-hour meeting and then stay in the lodge, have a short hunt in the afternoon, another meeting at noon, and then we'd like to leave. Mm-hmm. Is that feasible to do that?
Yeah.
And is there a limit to the number of birds I can have out there?
Not on a controlled shooting area. A controlled shooting area, we can put out all the birds you want to pay for.
Okay. So on my corporate hunt, how many guys can I bring?
You can bring quite a few, but I need to know far enough in advance that I can decide. The main guide I use can probably handle 6, maybe 8 people on a hunt. But if you bring 12 or 14 people, then I'm looking at another person with another pair of dogs, and then we'll have to decide whether we split them up in groups of 6 or whether we just keep one group of 12, that kind of thing. So I need to know those things in advance. But if you say you're going to bring 12 people in, I'm going to pay for and line up birds for 12 people. So you're going to pay for a 12-person hunt. And then if somebody backs out and you only show up with 9, you're still going to have to pay for all 12, because I had to hire a guide and I agreed to pay him for 12 people. I had to buy birds for 12 people. It's one of those deals that I've gone to all the expense to meet 12. So bring 12.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're still paying for 12.
Yeah.
You know, and because that can get real expensive.
Yes, it can.
You know,
Quite expensive.
and most of the time on a deal like that, it's amazing. Most of the time, if there's a big shot comes along, he just used a corporate credit card.
Pays for it all and calls it good.
Yeah, and it's high dollar figure to him, but it was a corporate expense. It was like a hiccup.
Yeah.
Didn't mean much to him. But, you know, if I line a guide up well in advance and agree to pay him for 12 hunters in that day, and then that guide has to bring 2 helpers along and 2 extra dogs that he has to pay for. And when he gets there, he's going to be expected to get paid for 12 people because he's paying for 2 extra guides or helpers.
And guaranteed those helpers and guides a certain dollar amount.
And most of those people are very willing to go sit under the patio and have a few liquid refreshments while the guide and the helpers clean all the damn birds.
Yes.
You know, that's just that's how business is done.
Yes.
Nowadays. So it can be done. And you know, I would say I've got limits. I wouldn't want to have over 16 people, maybe, something like that, because that gets pretty big.
Yeah,
for a
and
field.
then you hit 16, then you're going to have to create 2 different groups.
That's right.
And a lot of times the corporate hunters don't want to break up into groups. They want to stay together. Now, if they wanted to stay together, there's ways to do it, but it gets really difficult.
Yeah.
And it starts to become unsafe.
Yeah. And, you know, corporate management team guys, sometimes they're pretty important and they're a little hard to manage.
Yes. Yes.
So it's you don't want people getting irritated with a guide because the guide's telling them to straighten up.
Yeah.
Because, you know, their management, they don't have to do that. So it becomes a little tricky, but I've had like 3 or 4 of those types groups from anywhere from 8 to 12 in the last couple of years, and it's worked out just fine.
Yeah. And they've come back.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so along the line of upland hunting, I know because quail, as we talked before, are becoming a little more sparse and hard to find. So you provide the opportunity for people to be able to hunt quail in coveys,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yes, I do.
So you have the ability to put a covey, different coveys throughout one of your sections of your property.
Yep. We have, if your group wants to have 8 birds apiece put out for a hunt for an afternoon or something like that, we'll take the birds. I've got a pen where I do raise some birds, but I buy them when they're almost fully grown, and I just have them on hand in that pen. And we put them out like 4 to 8 birds at a time, sometimes under big cedar trees and in areas where you're going to have to hunt for another 150 yards before you run into another group of birds. And, 6 guys at 8 birds apiece is 48 birds. Well, we're liable to have 8 different spots in the field where there's 6 birds. And when the dogs go on point with one, there's a good chance that you're going to get 5 or 6 birds in the air at the same time. It'd be a small covey.
Yep.
But it's surprising, I'd rather have 2 or 3 birds get up on quail than to have a group of 20 that just explode out of the wild.
Yeah, then you can't figure out which one to shoot.
Most of the time, if 20 birds flush, 20 birds fly away.
Yeah.
So this thing, and then if you do get 6 birds up and you kill 1 or 2 of them, and you watch, you're going to be able to go find 3 more of those birds, and that's okay.
Yep.
Normally on a wild bird deal, if you found a covey of 20 quail, if you killed 8 out of that covey, I'd say pull off of it and leave them alone.
Yeah.
And they'll be there next year with 20 or 25 birds again next year. But these pen-raised birds, why, predators are going to get them because they weren't raised in the wild. They're a little bit stupid when it comes to surviving in the wild.
Yeah.
But they fly good, and people enjoy it, and I enjoy doing it because I know where the dogs are going to find the birds.
Yeah.
That kind of deal. Yeah. So we can do a lot of things, And
So you're a pretty flexible guide business when it comes to the opportunities you can provide to people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other opportunities you can provide that we haven't covered yet is waterfowl hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And which we both understand the last couple of years has been pretty tough.
Yeah.
Because the rainfall just hasn't been here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as that rainfall comes back, and it will,
Mm-hmm.
do you have plenty of property? You said something about the riverbed.
I've got a half a mile in Inniscar River, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 what I call farm ponds, and I do not have all of them supplied with ground blinds or pit blinds or anything like that. I do have a pit blind on one bigger pond, but until we get water, that pit blind is like 70 yards from the water right now.
Yeah, so we need rain.
Oh, we need rain bad. We do. But if if they want to call their own ducks and put out their own decoys, it's a self-guided hunt. I'll take you, show you the property, and let you set up. Most of my things have a spot around it somewhere where there's willow trees and stuff like that, to where people can just back into that brush and sit there with their camo on and call it their decoys. They don't have to have a pit blind. It's not always the most expensive setup that yields the best results.
Yeah. So my understanding is you've picked up a guide this year,
Yep.
a new guide.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year you'll be able to possibly offer some guided waterfowl hunts
Yep.
based on timing and
Yeah.
when the birds are in and
Yep.
waterfall and
And see, that's the problem with waterfowl hunting, is that if the birds haven't migrated yet, even though the season's on, I'll tell you.
yeah.
I mean, if there's not ducks on our water, there's no use. We'll schedule another time.
Yeah.
Pheasants, I'll just buy the birds when you show up. So we can do pheasants on a controlled shooting area. You can go from 1st of September to the end of April.
So you've got all kinds of opportunity,
Oh, yeah.
especially with pheasant hunting.
Yeah.
But your one of your most enjoyable and opportunities is your deer hunts.
Yep. There's just something about a deer hunt that everybody. I give them advice. I've got several ways. I mean, the worst thing you want to do is take a shower and get all clean and then spray yourself all full of perfume,
Yeah.
your deodorant and stuff like that. Now use the no scent soap and be clean. When you walk into the hunt, don't make yourself sweat. Walk in quietly. Fact of the matter is, take some clothes off before you walk in. And then if you need to, put the clothes on when you crawl in the ladder.
Yeah, I know. When I go deer hunting, I unzip everything.
Oh, you don't want to get yourself steamed up.
No.
And go slower. Walk slow. And I tell people, I said, respect the property. If you go in early and you go in quietly, if you haven't killed your deer, wait till 30 minutes after dark and come out as quietly as you went in, so you don't spook something that just bedded down.
Yeah, you don't want to be climbing out of your deer stand in
That's right.
daylight because something's going to see you.
That's right. And some of these guys, they just don't understand. They go hunt, and then at about 10:30 they come home for coffee and a sandwich and go back at 2 o'clock. And, they're in and out, in and out, in and out. Well, the more travel and the more people you put on property, it reduces your opportunity to be successful. And I just tell people, go hunt and stay there. And they'll eventually come to you.
Yeah.
And it's that way with deer and that way with turkeys. But it's so hard for people to do. They're paying for their time out there, and they're using up their vacation time and all that, and they're just sitting there with nothing happening. And they feel like they've got to move. And some of them do. They get out, they move up and down the creek and do the things they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And then it usually doesn't work.
So one of the other thing we haven't talked about yet is you guys also, through your organization, you also give back to the community in several different ways. So the first way I know you guys give back to the community is through Pheasants Forever here in Reno County.
Right.
Explain to us what you do and how you give back to your community there.
Okay, well, Pheasants Forever is a group of volunteers, and they all have expertise in certain things, and we work with Wildlife and Parks and Pheasants Forever to provide the opportunity to get the youth, what's the word I'm looking for? The
Hunter's Ed.
Hunter's Ed, there you go. The Hunter's Ed education thing in order for you to be able to buy your license when you're 16. And we take them when they're 11, I believe.
11's the youngest.
11's the youngest. And before COVID, we did 3 of them a year, and I just open up the property for them to come, and they set up 3 or 4 different stations or 5, and they show people what it is to shoot a muzzle loader and what it is to shoot a center fire and a rim fire and what it is to shoot trap. And lately we've been doing some archery, and we've been doing some ladder stand safety. So it's more than just pheasants, you know.
Yeah.
And they get their hunter education safety. We may run 3. If we did 3, we'd probably have 20 or 25 each time. So we could do quite a few kids in a year. We've had women's programs with similar type things. It's surprising how many people will bring their grandkids out to get their hunter's safety, and they themselves takes the course.
Yeah.
The grandparents, and parents in some cases, and then we have a parent-child hunt for about 8 or 10 pairs that come and stay in the lodge, and we actually take them out and let them work behind a dog and shoot a live bird as it flies, or try to. I think each kid gets 3 birds to shoot or something, and then they have to learn. They learn how to field dress and clean their bird and get it ready to take home so somebody can fix it and prepare it. We want every bird to be consumed. We don't waste birds out there, and then we do this last year we did a pollinator plot where we planted a lot of wildflowers and the like, so kids can realize that there's all kinds of beautiful plants out there that provide a lot of insects. Nothing better for quail than a bunch of insects.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And they have an opportunity to learn about all the different grasses that we have out there on our CRP grass. There's somebody from, I believe it's from Wildlife and Parks.
It's Pheasants Forever biologist.
Biologist, okay. And they come out and take them around for an hour or so, and when you find a different grass, they explain what it is and how tall it grows, and gives them an idea why we plant a mixture of grasses and not just one grass. And so, you know, we do. They do trap shooting, which you know, I think probably the most appropriate gun for that age group would be like a 20 gauge.
Yeah.
And they get to shoot with our coaching, and we've got a couple of guys that are really good at standing behind them, watching them to see if they're always behind the clay target, or if they're ahead of it, or whether they're leaning into it correctly, or their feet are right, and those kind of things. And if you ever get good at that, you'll be good at shooting a live bird.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, we have like up to 3 hunter ed classes. Then we have a women's program, and we have a youth shoot with parents. And, you know, we just make it available to them as supporting the hunting industry and Pheasants Forever.
And you guys provide 90% of this at no cost to the Pheasants Forever organization, right? Correct? So you're opening up your property, which you could definitely bring in significant revenue in the time frame that they're on your property.
But, you know, you got to look to the future. And if these young people will get their hunter ed class and then take trap shooting at high school and things like that, why they're liable to maybe think they'd pass that on someday to the next generation too.
Yes.
And we need more young hunters.
Yes, we do.
'Cause, I'm 74 years old, but the majority of the people that hunt right now with me are closer to my age than they are to
20.
20 years old.
Yeah. One of the things that a lot of people may not know is that trap shooting teams in high school level is the largest growing and most popular sporting activity at the high school level nationwide.
Yep.
Currently. And so that opens up that opportunity for that many youth to maybe want to come out and do more hunting and getting in the outdoors. The other area that I know you guys work with, and we're just going to touch on this, is you guys also support an organization that is for the betterment of life in your area, living life in your area. And what they're doing is, I'm probably using the wrong phrase. I can't remember the name of the organization, unfortunately. But what they're doing is they're trying to ensure that the wildlife and the habitat and the beauty of Kansas stays the way it is through ensuring that this residential area and farming ground and hunting ground stays the way it is and opens up that opportunity for more families to move into the area instead of letting the area be taken over by wind farm.
Right. That's Reno County Citizens for Quality of Life.
I had part of it.
You did. You had it. And, the wind energy thing is a controversial thing.
Yes.
And it's a typical David and Goliath type deal. There's a lot of money being thrown at promoting wind energy. And yet we think, our group thinks, that wind energy is not as sustainable as everybody thinks. And it definitely won't compete to make a cheaper or more efficient use of energy.
Yes.
So, we fought them, and we're having difficulties with them yet. We're still in court with a lawsuit to try to keep them from moving into our area. But they are all over the country.
Yeah. But here, the key to what you guys are doing, you're not saying don't put up wind farms.
Right.
You're saying this is a residential area. For the most part, don't put wind farms in our backyard.
Yeah.
That's all you guys are saying. You guys aren't saying don't put wind farms up. You guys are saying go out to the areas where there's significantly less population.
Right.
And put your wind farms out in this region where the population is significantly less.
Right.
Instead of an area where there's new homes being built in that region yearly.
Yeah.
Where there's some areas that there may not be a new home built for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Well, we recently, the county commission has worked with us and so forth here, and they have essentially placed a ban on wind energy in the zoned areas of Reno County. And we were out yesterday or the day before driving around, and there's already 4 or 5 new homes being built down in our area. And 3 years ago, they stopped building because they weren't sure whether the wind energy or the turbines were going to be in our area or not.
Yeah.
And people don't realize just how big these things are. The ones they wanted to put in our area are 499 feet tall.
That's a pretty tall thing.
The tallest building in Reno County is barely 210 feet tall.
So what you're saying is this thing's
monstrous. It's over
enormous.
Twice as tall as the tallest building in downtown Hutchinson.
That's pretty.
And that now is a small one. The newer ones are over 800 feet tall.
Whoa.
The new turbines.
So, because I don't know these things, so what is the average lifespan of a wind turbine?
Well, they claim it's a 30-year lifespan.
So after that 30 years, can we recycle the blades?
Well, they're working on that. I mean, I would have said 3 or 4 years ago no, but I think they're finding ways of using some of that material now for decorative bridges and things like that at parks, because they're a fiberglass and a metal combination, the way I hear it. But
So I've seen because I'm dumb, I've seen articles and ads of giant landfills full of these turbine blades. I thought renewable energy was supposed to be renewable. Everything about this should be recyclable, renewable.
Well,
and there's only so many decorative bridges you could build, right?
Yeah. You're right.
And don't these things have significant amount of oil in them too?
Oh yeah. The nacelle up at the top of them will have, I think, over 200 gallons of cooling oil.
So the renewable energy takes fossil fuels to run.
Yeah.
So it's not really renewable.
And renewable energy also has to have something there. What does it take to make a windmill?
I've heard
It takes railroad tracks to get material in. It takes concrete to store it on, and to parking lots and buildings to put it on. It takes all kinds of buildings to build the nacelles and the blades and all this type of deal. It takes energy to move them from one part of the country to the other. The ones they wanted to put here in Reno County were made by GE. The ones made here in Reno County didn't get the bid. And see, they would have been only 20 miles away, but they bought GE instead.
that's unique.
Well, makes you wonder, throw things up. But, I don't want to badmouth them too hard right now, because at this point, we've got a ban on for us.
Yeah.
They cannot build in our area. And there's lots of reasons for it, For one thing, they throw all kinds of stuff at it. They get a 10-year tax moratorium on turbines. They pay no property tax for 10 years. And then they wear out before they're 20 years old instead of 30. So they really only have a 8 or 10-year life to pay taxes, property tax, in the county.
So here's the other question. So let's say Joey says, yeah, you can put a wind turbine on my property. In that 20 years, when that thing needs replaced or updated, if the company says we don't want to replace it or update it, whose responsibility is it to remove that thing?
Well, that has to be worked out by the county, and the county needs to have something in line that says we want escrow accounts to be able to put it back in the shape it was in before. And that means removing all the concrete to 4 foot of depth and fill it in with good dirt so that it can be farmed over again, and get rid of all of the above ground parts, And what'll it take? It takes over $3 million to build a turbine and put it up out there to function.
Per turbine.
Per turbine. It's probably going to take, 6, 8, 900,000, something like that, to remove it.
So is there any way a turbine could ever generate enough energy to offset the energy and cost of putting one up?
I would say they have to be getting more efficient now than they have previously been and all of that. But at one point, somebody had information that said it takes 20 years of production from a turbine to get the energy back that it took to build it.
Is that non-stop production?
Well, probably not quite, but expected production.
Okay.
Because, the wind doesn't always blow.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's why I was curious about non-stop production. Because I was going to say, well, what if the wind doesn't blow? Right, just like you said. So we We are approaching the 2-hour mark.
Really?
We're approaching the 2-hour mark on our conversation. And so this is kind of where I like to cut it off, because I would like to be able to have you back on again, if you would like, and be able to have a whole nother conversation about a whole nother group of things.
Okay.
So this is where we'll, excuse me, man, dinner was good.
Yeah.
It's kind of talking to me. So what I'd like to do is, before I sign off with my normal sign off, I'm going to give you one more chance here to look into the camera over here and give them, I'd scoot a little closer to the mic.
There you go.
And give them, this is your one last hoorah before the end of the podcast.
Okay.
And I hope you enjoyed yourself. I enjoyed talking to you quite a bit. Give them your information. Let them know how to get a hold of you.
Okay.
And that way, hopefully, people will get to know you a little bit better and maybe generate some opportunities for you.
Well, my name's Steve Westfahl. My wife is Margie, Margy, and she and I run Irish Creek Outfitters and Irish Creek Lodge. We do a lot of hunting, and we can accommodate a lot of things, and we're very adaptable. But we have the lodge available for non-hunting activities also. Just check with us, then we'd be glad to try to line something up. We think we're reasonably priced. We hope we're friendly. We carry a lot of insurance. I carry all the liability when people hunt on our property. We give safety seminars whenever we take a group out, and our main issue is to be safe and to have a good time, have a lot of fun, and we hope to get things lined up to go hunting quicker than, say, today for a hunt tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'd like 60 days, And deer hunts, if you're interested in a deer hunt and you're an out-of-state hunter, if you'd happen to run across this presentation or whatever, deer hunting must be applied for in April for an out-of-state hunter. So you're almost times out for this year. Local hunters, if you want to hunt with me, check with me. If you got some kids that want to hunt, check with me. If you don't want to hunt my big antlered deer, you just want to get the kids to kill a doe, I'm pretty reasonable. But don't pretend you want to kill a doe and then go out there and kill a big buck and surprise me.
Yeah.
That's just not the way I do business. So.
No. So what's your website?
Website is irishcreekoutfitters.com. My email is irishcreekoutfitters.steve@gmail.com. And you can tell I like to visit, so get on the website, find my phone number, and we'll visit about hunting and see what can work for you. And we think we can provide a quality hunt for most people.
And if someone were to text you to see if you're available when they get your phone number off the website, would that be okay?
Sure. I do actually text. I'm not real good at creating a lot of things, but I've got some ability to text a little bit, and hopefully I'll get back to people fairly quickly.
Yeah. I personally know Steve. I've been out there. I've seen the enthusiasm with people that get the opportunity to come out and hunt with you. I've heard the comments of how generous and kind you and your wife are. And I really hope you guys take the opportunity to check out Steve Westfahl at irishcreekoutfitters.com. Email Steve at irishcreek.steven. irishcreekoutfitters.steve at gmail.com.
Right.
So we're going to end our podcast right at about our 2-hour mark today. And I'm going to end like I always end. Remember, folks, take the opportunity, spend your money in the good old USA, support your local businesses like Steve. If you have the opportunity to come out hunting, come hunt with Steve, spend your money local, spend your money at your mom and pop stores. Remember, when you spend your money at a local store, local business, you are supporting that family. Take their kid, their son, their daughter to baseball, dance, whatever their kids are into, when you utilize those dollars there, because our local businesses are what give back to the community like Steve does, and looks out for the community and looks out for the people inside the community. So please spend your money local, buy American made, the best you possibly can. Don't spend your money on any other country's stuff. Do it the best you can, USA made. It will keep our country strong and keep us moving forward. Great seeing you. I hope you love the podcast. We'll have another one out for you soon. Have a good evening. Bye.